Howdy, folks. My name is Troy Estes. I'm a developer engagement manager over here at NVIDIA. And today we're going to talk about 5 factors contributing to tech startup success. Before we begin, I just want to extend a huge thank you out to Futurist Expo for hosting myself and all the other awesome speakers and this great content. But I do really want to thank you folks, the audience today. I caught the tail end of the last presentation speaking about the value of community and what that means. And even in a virtual world, us being able to come together and speak to each other in a two-way direction as a community, I think is really, really important. So thank you for spending your evening talking with me today. So I like to start off with this slide because I think this statistic is extremely powerful. 87% of organizations believe generative AI will disrupt their business in the next 18 months. 87% is essentially every major business across every major industry that we can think of. And 18 months represents an extremely short foreseeable future for us. So as we're thinking about sort of what that next stage of technology means for us and what it means to be a startup in that environment, in reality, we have to consider that the way that people start businesses is going to change. The way that people invest in businesses is going to change. The way that people build products and consume products is going to change. But in reality, the products themselves are going to change as well. And with all of that change disrupting sort of the entire cycle of what it means to launch a product and gain traction in the market, it makes it difficult for startups to rely on previous principles that were relied on over the last 10, 20 years in order to be successful for this future change. And so what I'm hoping to do today is to spend some time and go back to basics on what that could mean for startups to be successful in this environment. And that leads me to this slide right here. When we're having conversations through our NVIDIA program with startups, and we're helping them become successful, either going to market or launching new products, the conversations that we have usually fall into one of these 5 buckets: secure funding, scalable technology, market fit, effective go-to-market, and strategic partnerships. And the reason why I wanted to bring up these 5 pillars in this particular presentation is because it is important that if we're going to build great businesses in context of that dynamic change and how generative AI is affecting the world and the broader artificial intelligence ecosystem, then we need to go back to the fundamentals on what makes great business and how we can build great businesses for the market. And so I kind of wanted to touch on these over the next 20 minutes of my presentation. Now, I'm well aware that the combined business experience of the audience here is quite extensive. And so I'm less trying to focus on discussing these principles from a classic business book perspective, but I think it's important that we refresh ourselves on some of these key learnings. And my goal is to sort of do a quick refresher on some of these, but also articulate what each of these fundamentals means for the dynamic market that we're about to go into. I do want to mention that that there is that Q&A chat. If you do have questions or thoughts throughout the presentation, I encourage you to use it. Hopefully, I'll have time at the end to answer some questions. Again, I'd love this to be sort of a two-way style of communication. So if you have thoughts or questions, then feel free to put them in there. So when we're talking about funding, it really breaks down into 2 separate areas. One side of the coin is the actual money that you get and what you spend that money on. And the other side of the coin is how you're leveraging your relationships with your investors and what that means for your business. So let's talk about the capital first, and then we'll talk about the investors. When you're thinking about capital, it's important to focus on the core competencies. Where you invest your money is a reflection of where you find value in your business and what is most important to you. And so focusing on your core competencies allows you to set up your business in a way to focus and value the things that are going to make you money. And by core competencies, I mean the core structure of your product, your intellectual property, the value that you bring to your customers, some of your competitive advantage there. By investing in those things, usually some of the other variables surrounding getting a product to market take care of themselves. Another way to think about capital, or another way to think about where you invest your capital, is investing in the areas that can insulate your core competencies in order to make that successful. So on the slide here, I've mentioned talent, infrastructure, and customer acquisition. Because if you have your core competencies set up, then you need the talent, strong talent there to be able to deliver on your expectations. You need the technology infrastructure in order to accommodate what your vision is. And then you need to be able to have a strong pipeline in order to get customers in the door to utilize your strong product. The other side of that coin there is how you're leveraging your relationships with investors. And this, I think, ends up being the key takeaway of this slide in context of what that could mean for the dynamic change that we're going to see in the future. Because especially for small startup teams or pre-series or Series A companies, leveraging the networks and the knowledge of your investors can be extremely helpful to gain traction with lighthouse customers and to start building momentum for your product in the market. VCs, of course, are staffed with advisors that are market experts, or they're 4 or 5-time founders who have been successful in the past. And not only do they have really good knowledge about operations or marketing, or maybe industry trends that they see that you might not be paying attention to, or political changes that are coming down the pipeline, legislation that might affect you, but they also have strong networks that can connect you to customers that you might need, right? When we're launching products and we're getting an idea out there, that first couple of customers that are those big logos, those big names that are going to form really good relationships with us are really, really important. And leveraging our VCs can help us get there. And so I think, as we go forward into this space where investments are changing and how we're building businesses is changing, viewing your investors as strategic partners and choosing an investor based off the value of their strategic partnership, I think is going to be a really important key for new startups being successful in the technology space. Once the kind of funding is sort of taken care of, it's important to think about how your technology scales. And this falls into 4 main buckets: the infrastructure, or your actual compute, your performance and how your software and other systems around your software work, the elasticity of your product, how you're able to allocate resources based off changes or demand fluctuations, and then what does that mean for building for the future? How will you scale to customer needs and different dynamics that might affect your product and your business? Infrastructure and performance are fairly straightforward. And elasticity and future proofing your product take a little bit of vision to best understand how to make that work. But in reality, having really scalable infrastructure is a really good way of making sure that when you do start to get traction, that your product isn't overwhelmed, your business isn't overwhelmed, and that your customers have a good experience. And the example that we always use when we talk about scalable technology is OpenAI and ChatGPT. In the first week, they had something close to 1 million users just in the first week. And so that's a really good example of a situation where if they didn't have the scalable technology to accommodate that amount of users, then obviously they would have fewer users, right? They'd have to cap it at some capacity. But the users who did want access to the tool, who were unable to get access to it, would have had a significantly worse user experience, which might have turned them off of the product. ChatGPT is a little bit of an anomaly because it's so popular that people came back for more, even if they were denied the first time. But for many other products, we don't see that is the case. So that it's a really good way of thinking about if you're going to get traction in the market early and you're looking to get a large amount of customers in the beginning, that's a good way to do it. Once you have your infrastructure set up, it's a good way to finally figure out, okay, now let's go get some customers. And this ends up being a very important discussion. this one seems sort of the most obvious. It's the one most focused on, I think, in sort of business conversations or business books and lectures and stuff. But we find that this one is a tough nut to crack for many of the founders that we discuss, that we have conversations with. And it's because a lot of the times they build their products as experiments, and they build their products to be to prove the concept of the idea that they're trying to put forward to investors. And so when it comes time to actually scale that product, and it comes time to actually bring that product to market, a lot of the times the effort hasn't gone through to think about exactly what that product or idea will mean for the user base, and how that product will work in the real world. So that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about scale. If you're building a product, make sure that it can scale early, so you don't have to, once you've proven your experiment, you don't have to go back to basics and rebuild your whole product. But also think about market fit early on to understand, okay, we have this idea. How is it going to be consumed in the way that customers or target customers want to consume that product? And that boils down to four things. Number one is having a product that addresses a pressing need in the ecosystem for the target customers that you want to target. Number two is building a product that disrupts or greatly improves on the current situation or alternatives to your product or competitive solutions. Number three is develop unique messaging and unique value propositions to articulate your product to the ecosystem and to differentiate competitively against other solutions. And then number four is embracing customer feedback. Customer feedback is a little bit of a fine line and takes some vision here, because you want to find a balance between listening to your customers and taking in all the information that you need in order to make your product better and more usable, but also making sure that you are leading your customers with your vision, that you are bringing new ideas to the market that they might not have thought of before. And so it does take a balance to be able to bring new ideas and to push that forward and make sure that those are successful, but also making sure that you're listening to your customers and you're building a strong community. So in terms of what we can take away from this slide that is going to be most helpful for technology startups over the next 2, 3, 5 years, I really believe it's the second bucket here, focusing on building a disruptive product or a product that greatly improves the current situation or alternative solutions. And the reason why I think it's going to be this second bucket is because, going back to that statistic, 87% of companies believe that generative AI is going to disrupt their business. And it's true. But what we're seeing is generative AI added to products or solutions that already exist. It's the same products that we know and love, just plus some generative AI or plus some deep learning, plus some machine learning. That's awesome. Those products are great. They're very high quality. And we should always be focused on improving existing products with new technology. But if a startup is going to be really successful, if a startup is going to build fast traction with strong customer bases, then they need to think a little bit outside the box and disrupt the current system to create an idea that is slightly more revolutionary than just sort of the same idea before, plus a little bit of generative AI. Again, nothing wrong with that. Those are strong products. But if we're looking to build strong, successful startups in the technology ecosystem that takes advantage of the dynamic environment that we're experiencing, it's going to be in this second bucket here. And to go back to the ChatGPT example, that's a really good example of something that I don't think that anybody in the broader market had really an idea that was coming. Folks, the researchers you talked to who are really hot on AI saw this coming from miles away, but many folks, that was a brand new technology for them. So once you have your market fit, you've got your funding set up, you've got your technology all set up and ready to go to scale for your customer base, it's then time to think about what your go-to-market strategy is. And this is for sure the beefiest topic in this deck. There's lots of really good business books written about this topic by very successful people. And so if you're interested in this idea and you want to learn more about it, I suggest that I encourage you to take a look at some of the literature surrounding this, because there's some really great content in the world that exists on how to build an effective go-to-market strategy. Every go-to-market strategy is different, but most go-to-market strategies will consume the same ideas. And so some of those ideas are represented here, and I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk through it, because I think it ends up being really important context for not only this presentation, but for how startups can be successful. So I've built this slide as a cycle because the job of having an effective go-to-market strategy is never done. As soon as you feel like you're in a good place, it's important to revisit your assumptions every 6 months, every 12 months, or even more often than that, to make sure that your go-to-market strategy is keeping up with changes that you're seeing in the market, either consumer changes, but also legislative changes, political changes, geopolitical changes. All of that stuff affects how we do business. So important to keep that in mind. So let's start at the top right here on market analysis, and then we'll kind of hook our way clockwise. Market analysis is a really important yet often overlooked aspect of an effective go-to-market strategy. And the reason why market analysis is so important is because it allows founders, and I'm using founders here, but I really mean if you're working on a product team at an existing company, all this information applies to you as well. The go-to-market strategy exists for new products in existing organizations or for new companies as well. But if you're launching a new product, using your market analysis to better understand the parameters of the market is really important. What are the trends seeing? Who are the consumers? What type of money do they want to spend on a product? How do they like to be communicated with? And in what way do they want to be communicated? And how best can we position our product against alternatives or competitive products in the ecosystem? Market analysis can tell you all of that, in addition to the classic total available market. What is your revenue projection going to look like over X many years? All of that stuff comes from your market analysis. So as you're going into thinking about your product or your strategy, take some time and do some research on the market to better understand, what that's going to look like once you launch your product and go to market. And I will say it's never too late to do market analysis. Even if your product is already in the market and you have customers and you're building stuff, it's always a good time to take some time and do some research. The next bucket is customer segmentation, and this flows out of the information that you will get from your market analysis. Having a very good idea of who your customers are and are not is a very important way of making sure that you have the right messaging to target them. But segmenting your target audience into different groups can be very helpful to make sure that you are hyper-targeting those groups and you're tailoring your message for what each of those audience want to hear. So I'll give you an example. For instance, let's say you had a computer vision product that was a computer vision software that was able to identify different products, all different types of products, or maybe it could identify defects on a product. That application is applicable in a lot of different environments. It's applicable for retail environments. Maybe folks at supermarkets want to track what products they have on shelves and when they need to restock items. But that same technology could be applicable to an industrial setting where, when in a manufacturing line, people want to pay attention to defects that they find on products or products that are flowing through their conveyor belts or other manufacturing equipment. So it's the same product, but the audiences are completely different. So your messaging for the retail folks are going to be very different than your messaging for the manufacturing folks. And so segmenting your customer base out and building tailored messages based on how each of those groups likes to consume content and the messages that they need to hear in alignment with their unique needs is really important. The next is pricing. And this is another one that sort of falls out of the information that you will gather from market analysis. Pricing is quite complicated. It's a formula that is with several variables, including your perceived value, what the customers want to pay, what your competitors are doing, the costs that you have building your product. There's quite a bit that goes into it. But this is, of course, an extremely important part of any go-to-market strategy, because it is your revenue. And again, a lot of the variables can be determined for that equation by your market analysis. Heading on to the left here, the bottom left, distribution channels. So this is actually one of my favorites to talk about, because I think it's quite interesting. Back in the day, distribution channels literally meant how physical products arrived at the customer, right? We've got a distribution center, we have a warehouse, we've got trucks, we load the trucks, we put the trucks at a store, somebody comes and purchases something from the store and gets it home, and that's how it's distributed from the producer to the consumer. But nowadays, when we talk about software, people don't really think about distribution channels in the same way they did before, but it's just as important for software as it ever was for hardware, because the way that consumers get access to your software represents the user experience they have and how good or bad that user experience was. So for instance, if it's very easy for consumers to download, install, and become successful with your software, then that user experience is very seamless, it's very easy, you're able to scale the new customers very quickly, they can sort of take care of themselves, so to speak, and that's a very good distribution model for making sure that your software gets into the hands of your customers. Sometimes products are more complicated, so I'll go back to the example I used before, a computer vision software in a retail environment. That's a little bit more complicated than just sort of downloading a piece of software and installing it on your computer at a supermarket. It requires probably technicians to go out there and make sure that the software is integrated with the camera infrastructure and the servers on site and stuff like that. But all of that should be considered as part of the distribution channel, and that should be processes that are thought of as part of your go-to-market strategy. How seamless is that? How seamless is that process? Once we get consumers in the door and they're aware of our product and they like our product, how easy it is for them to get successful and up and going using our product. So I could go on all day about distribution channels, but I think it's something worth considering and thinking about as you're building your startup or you're launching new products. The next is sales and marketing. I'm a little biased here because I come from a marketing background. And so I think I have an overinflated idea of how important sales or marketing is, but it ends up being a really important way to make sure that you're building the right pipeline and that you're executing on that pipeline. So you want to staff your sales and marketing organizations with as many people as necessary, but as few as possible to be able to hit your revenue goals. You want the right marketing people in order to broadly target your message to the right audience to build that awareness. But then you want the right salespeople who are skilled enough to bring in those lighthouse accounts through the entire customer journey, or to bring in those high touch accounts, from consideration to purchase. And that ends up being a really important balance, but of course is the bread and butter of a successful business. And then lastly, of course, feedback and iteration. The previous speaker spoke about this. I mentioned this earlier in my deck as well, is that having the right feedback loop from customers to your product team is really, really important. And it's important not to just rely on word of mouth through this. You want to build the right channels into your product and into your processes that allow customers to relay information back directly to your product teams without having to go through salespeople or account people or etc. So this could be forums, this could be social media, this could be modules within your product that allow customers to submit feedback as they're using it. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but making sure that that is prioritized and then that you're utilizing that feedback at a micro and at a macro level is a really good way to make sure that your product has stickiness with the consumer and that it's usable. So again, there's lots to unpack on this slide, but if you're curious about it or curious in learning more, there's tons of resources on the internet that unpack this a little more. But feel free to put questions in the chat as well. Lots of good books on this topic as well. So the last pillar that I want to talk about is strategic partnerships. Strategic partnerships have always been a very important way for businesses to have strong foundations in the industry, There's lots of different types of partnerships, and a lot of them add different value. Some of them are represented here: market expansion, speed to market, networking opportunities, brand credibility. But I think where strategic partnerships will be most effective for startups moving forward in the generative AI space is integration partners, technology partners. And the reason I believe that is because we are living in an ever more interconnected world where all of our products and all of our software speak to the other products that we use. And so when you're thinking about your product, it's important to have distribution partners, important to have market partners, it's important to have brand partners, et cetera. But it's also important to have those technology partners to integrate with. If your product exists as one stage of a multi-stage process for your consumer, it's important to think about what other products they use in those other stages and integrate with those tools so that for your consumer, it's a seamless workflow to complete their entire process with the tools available to them. And if your product has those integrations with all the other tools that they use, that's going to be a user experience that is awesome and provides competitive advantage to other products in the market who might not have those same integrations, right? It could be a better product, but if it takes them longer to use and it disrupts their workflow and it's kind of annoying because they have to go back and forth and stuff, then it's not going to gain a lot of traction with the consumers in the same way that a very easy product will do. So as we think about partnerships, moving forward, focusing on those strategic partnerships, I think the technology partnerships is going to be really helpful. And again, going back to your VCs, relying on your VC network to help gain traction, with those other organizations to get those partnerships off the ground can be a really helpful way to do that. So that leads me to what we're doing at NVIDIA to help startups address those 5 pillars and help them to be successful in the ever dynamic AI marketplace. Excuse me. And I think this slide does a good job of representing the scale of the NVIDIA Inception program. That's our program for startups. There's 16,000 global startups as part of our program. And that represents billions and billions of dollars of funding. And some of the awesome partners that we have are represented in the logos that you see on the slide here. The program is free to join, and it's staffed with lots of people on our end to communicate with these startups to help them not only become successful with NVIDIA technology, but to become successful in a market that is changing in the same capacity that we're seeing in the artificial intelligence space. So the benefits of the Inception program really come down to 3 major things: how folks are innovating, how they're building, and how they're growing. So I'm going to start with this first bucket here. On the left really represents the information that we have available to startups to help train them on the latest and greatest research and technology that's hitting the ecosystem. We have a ton of self-paced courses. We have a ton of technical resources. We've got forums. We've got videos. We have conference sessions. We have a ton of education that allows folks to get educated, not just on NVIDIA products. Yes, we do that, but also what is the latest research on generative AI? How is cutting edge computer vision going to change different verticals, et cetera, et cetera. And this information ends up being really important for folks who are building their products and trying to catch up to the latest that is coming out in the ecosystem. Also very important for folks who are making career changes or looking to upskill into different areas. This information is helpful. And one way we do that, I'll put a plug in there. We have a program called the Deep Learning Institute, which it provides free self-paced courses, certifications, hands-on workshops that allows folks to do that. So I encourage you to check that out as well. But another part of our program is the tools that we provide to folks to allow them to build on top of NVIDIA technology. And that's that middle bucket there. For the startups that are using NVIDIA technology, we provide access to free software development kits, pre-trained models, accelerators, and other software tools that help them become successful using our solutions. And this is really nice because they don't have to rebuild the wheel when trying to train a model. They don't have to go back to basics every time they want to pivot to a new industry. They can leverage our software development kits and the other tools that we have available to be able to make this successful. And we have SDKs across every vertical, across every use case. If it's healthcare, computer vision, generative AI, speech AI, we have tools that can help companies get started and be successful in this space. And of course, if you're using GPUs, there's lots of tools there that can allow you to be immediately successful using NVIDIA software. And then last, of course, we have a huge network of venture capitalists that we connect in right to our startup community. The VCs are always looking for the hottest and coolest, most innovative startups in the ecosystem, and they often go to our Inception program to find those startups. So we have a program called VC Connect, where the VCs are able to invest and hear pitches from startups directly through our Inception program. But we also have a ton of different events, both in person and virtual, where we bring our Inception community and we bring VCs to the same event so that they can connect and talk and perhaps work together if that's of mutual interest to them. So if you folks are out there and you're working at a startup and you're working on AI, you don't even need to be using NVIDIA technology. You can join the program without having adopted NVIDIA technology. I encourage you to get access. I encourage you to apply to the program to get access to these benefits. We offer $100,000 of free credits to startups who join the program. And there's a lot of other really great tools that are available there for folks trying to get started. It's all free to join. It's all easy. All the tools here are free in there as well. So all good there. That rounds out the bulk of my presentation. I'm very happy that I was able to present today. I want to again thank Atanas and Futurist Expo for having me, but very much would like to thank the audience here for tuning in and listening to these sessions. Again, I think this community is really, really important. Feel free to ask me any questions. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn if you're interested in learning more either about Inception or the VC program or any of the other go-to-market conversations I had in this presentation. We have an upcoming conference, GTC, which is happening in March. It has hundreds of sessions on a variety of different topics, both NVIDIA technology and our partners and our customers and all the cool research that's happening in AI. It's a free conference. I encourage you to attend. But Atanas, I will pass the ball over to you. Thank you so much for your time today.